It's time to start the show, guys. You've got John here, no driving gloves. I guess you knew the name of the podcast. We have Derek and Sean Yoder's joining us tonight because Will, I believe, is headed to California for the Grand National Roadster Show, or maybe that's next week. Either whatever. He's playing with that naked Impala to getting it ready for the show. We talked about it a little bit last week on the screwed up episode that I put out. I'm sorry if you got 2 downloads of it. I don't know what happened. The first download was missing about 40 minutes of show. So I had to quickly re-edit and re-upload. So some of you got it twice. I apologize. Some of you got it once. Either way, it helps our numbers. But how's everybody doing tonight?
Now that I'm home, great. It has been one of those weeks, and it's only Wednesday. So, yay.
It's Wednesday?
I think it's Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? I could be wrong.
I hope it is. But doing great, John. Doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I think Wednesday drug a little bit for me, a little bit long in the afternoon, but a little bit of excitement here, a little bit of excitement there.
Hey, John, do you know what day it is?
It's hump day.
Don't do it. You did it.
Of course I did it.
Don't do it.
You know what day it is? And this episode brought to you by a insurance company that employs a camel and a gecko.
This episode brought to you by Mike.
So we're in the midst of January. January is a great barometer for the collector car hobby, and that's what we're supposed to talk about on this show. So today we're going to talk about making cake. But we're sitting here, we're recording on the 15th of January. We decided to kind of do an auction episode. We talked about maybe doing a recording live and watching some cars go over the block and predicting and talking about them and things like that. Unfortunately or fortunately, because it's not going to make us look like idiots if we get the numbers wrong, we're going to let Derek explain why we can't really predict values on this show. I used to fall into the same category. Of course, I don't anymore, but Derek does, so we're respecting him on that. But Derek, you want to give a quick little rundown on why we're not going to discuss values of the cars that we're predicting? If the cars have already sold, we might give some numbers out.
Before I do that, can I go back to, you're saying you're respecting me on this show for once? Is that what I just heard?
Yes.
I heard it, and it's recorded.
Awesome. Yeah. All right.
For once.
So, yeah. So we, of course, as John said, we talked about possibly doing some other things with this show, but and John said he's worked in the museum world, nonprofit, and one of the things that any of us as nonprofit employees, especially those in museums that deal with collections, we have to be very careful talking about valuations of anything, but specifically in the world of collectibles that we respectively deal in our museum. So in my case, being in an automotive museum, I actually am not allowed to give any type of appraisals or valuations on vehicles. I mean, most specifically Corvettes right now, but for safety's sake, I stay away from all of vehicles. And it's due to nonprofit tax law. Back in the 1970s and 80s, a number of museums got in trouble for basically giving inflated appraisals that would lead to donors donating their objects to museums for the inflated, basically, tax write-off that they would get, and for that donation, which kind of gets into, tax fraud. And the IRS basically said, all right, this is over. We gotta change this, and basically wrote laws that say that any item being donated to a nonprofit institution has to have a third-party independent appraisal, and the museum staff can in no way be involved with that. And they should not be involved in the valuation of historic objects, again, whatever they deal with, due to basically the appearance of trying to inflate the market so people will get a better tax write-off for donations. It's tax law. It's long. It's boring. That's the best way I'm going to wrap it up. So that's why, as John says, especially I tonight will not be talking about any type of valuation estimates or guesstimates on what something might sell for. So
it's nice to enlighten the listeners a little bit on that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and since we're getting into this, this is an advice for the auction companies. If you have an auction site and you are listing cars, slot machines, bars, carousels, silverware, cash registers, I don't care. Every auction site should have every auction site should be searchable by lot number. So I can put in lot number 110 and I can see what my buddy told me. Hey, check out lot number 110. 2, you need to at least have some sort of printable section where I get a picture of the car and a description, because when I go to auctions, I like to kind of create my own catalog with my own notes. Yes, you send out a catalog, blah, blah, blah. It's a pretty book. They cost $50. I don't like to write in it. I like to do notes and stuff on my computer and have everything kind of digitally or PDF. That's just a personal observation by me, but in setting up and prepping for this tonight, Bonhams and RM, very respectable. I could search by lot number. Who was it that I got to? Gooding? Couldn't print, couldn't do a PDF, couldn't search by lot number. Sorry, I mean, I might go across the street to somebody else's auctions. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 auction houses pulled up on my computer, and I think the guys have another 1 or 2. So there's a lot of auctions going on. So that's just my personal observation. Anybody have a editorial to do in relation to auctions, or do we just want to jump in and?
Well, actually, John, if I can add one thing to the horrible explanation I just tried to give, I can give a pop culture reference that might help some of our listeners if they ever watched Pawn Stars. They occasionally would call in. I don't remember his name, but a gentleman from one of the museums there in the Las Vegas area. He had the big beard and the kind of
the beard of knowledge.
Yeah, and the I don't remember what type of hat it was that he always wears, signature hat. But he always on that show made reference to the fact that he could not give valuation. They only brought him in to basically verify whether something was real or a fake. That would be probably the best pop culture reference I could give to what we were talking about.
I've got nothing. You guys have lived in this world, and I have not lived in this world, but I have a lot of cars chosen to talk about, but that's all I have to give for this.
Well, jump in. Let's talk about a car. I can't remember. Is Barrett Jackson searchable by lot number?
I don't know. Even if it was, it wouldn't matter because it's not like I'm talking to someone who's like, go search lot number 141. Well, or whatever it is. I'm literally just scrolling through the master list, and Barrett Jackson Scottsdale's going on right now. And here's one thing about auctions that have always blown my mind, specifically Barrett and Russo and Steele, and there's a couple other ones out there that have always blown my mind about what the cars that are selling at these auctions actually bring. And I know, Derek, you can't talk about valuation, but you can talk about actual prices vehicles are being sold for. And there's some stuff going at Barrett anyway. And I think, John, you've looked up some other auctions. There's some stuff being sold right now for way less money than I would have ever thought it would be sold for. Specifically at Barrett in Scottsdale, I found it is let's see here. I'm going to pull it up. It is a 1998 F-150 pre-runner pickup truck, street legal pre-runner, fully built. I mean, like really nice pre-runner style suspension. It's got the bash bars in the front and all of your skid plates, and I mean it is a fully built, take this to Baja, punish it, beat it to death pickup truck. Sold for no reserve on Monday at Barrett Jackson Scottsdale for $10,450. I'm trying to wrap my brain around that, and I can't. I mean, literally one corner's worth of suspension on this truck when it was new was $10,000. I don't understand. Like there's stuff being sold so cheap right now, and I think you have some insight on that, John, and you might have some on it, Derek, as well. But how in the world could that truck sell for that? I don't get it.
Monday.
Really? Is that really what it is?
Yep. The money doesn't get there until Thursday or Friday. I mean, these people actually, believe it or not, a lot of these people actually do work.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a lot of people that have the money can basically say, I'm going to Barrett.
And Barrett has structured their auction now because they became known for all these six-figure cars. I mean, I'm watching their little scroll thing now, and you're talking Heritage GTs and 918s and, Paul Walker's collection and, just the vault thing here with all these street rods. Because all these six-figure, seven-figure cars, that's what Barrett Jackson became known as, and they wanted to attract people like you and I that have maybe a five-figure budget. So they've backed the week off, but we have to take Monday off for Tuesday off and go to Barrett Jackson. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Barrett Jackson have become kind of the bargain days. You go there and you're going to see stuff sell for $5,000, $6,000, and you can actually go home with something, and you can say you bought something at Barrett Jackson, which for some crazy reason is notable. I mean, you're not going to be on TV. Well, you might be now, since some of these channels are nothing but nonstop auction coverage. But
yeah, I know. I mean, on like paper channels, like on Prime, I've got Barrett coverage. I think it's on Prime. It's literally 24/7. It's crazy. It's just everything Barrett Jackson. It's absolutely nuts. But going back to this Monday, Tuesday thing, I guess because I don't come from the auction world, I always associated Barrett Jackson as you go there, and exactly what you said, John. You go there because you want people to come up and go, "That's a beautiful car. Where'd you get it?" "I bought this at Barrett Jackson," and you're willing to pay a premium for that, which I always thought was bonkers. It made no sense to me whatsoever. But I'm looking at this pre-runner pickup truck that probably cost bare minimum 80 grand to build back in the 90s, and wishing I had known about it, because I would have given a lung for this truck. It's entirely too cool for 10 grand.
Well, I've always said in my restoration careers that if you can get 20 to 25 cents on the dollar, you really won the game when it came to a restoration or a custom build. I mean, you haven't seen it yet, but the car Zara just got, we paid, I want to say a quarter of what that car, probably even 20% of what that car costs to buy and build. Just because it's a couple of years old, and it's kind of, an interest, and it's unfortunately the way that works. When you build something, I can kind of say get what you're saying about pre-runners, because this off-road, overland type experience is almost becoming the Porsche of 2019, 2020, and I think you'll see a big explosion later this year in 2021 of all these people doing these overlander cars where you can do a little bit of off-roading and, pretend you're, was it Ivan Stewart, the old off-roader from the Baja?
Yeah, man.
And be able to play that game and actually then camp out in the desert. So,
and drive it back and forth to work if you want to. I've always wanted a pre-runner style something, but I've never really been a truck person. But when I see this selling for $10,450 and it looks new, it looks brand new. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, those pre-runners are just too tall.
Yeah, but I think the other thing too, John, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall correctly, Barrett-Jackson, the auctions, and I think you were there earlier on in their auction, when they were starting up, you were there, but it was a much shorter auction with a lot less cars. It didn't run for, what are they up to now? Almost like 9 or 10 days of auctions. I mean, you're also like, one of the things is I think you're getting the pool of vehicles so stretched out and they're just trying to fill the days that they're not always bringing in the cars that are, the best and have the hype. And like John said, they're pushing the big cars off to Friday, Saturday so that they get the big money there. But I think it's also the fact that it's growing so big. It's the pool of cars is being stretched out and you're getting low dollar cars in. And number two, I also starting to think that the hype of Barrett-Jackson and, I bought a car at Barrett-Jackson is wearing off.
Well, and to go to your point, the auction this year is running January 11th through 19th. When I interned for Barrett-Jackson, it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday affair. And to be honest, I don't know how those guys do it, because when I interned for them, I drove from McPherson, Kansas to Scottsdale, got in at like 2 a.m. and called Drew, who now runs Russo Steel, who was going to be my supervisor, because I was told, call, and he was there working. And he said, can you come in? And I said, can I get a couple hours sleep? And he said, yeah, can you be here at 5? And my hotel was 45 minutes from the auction ground. So I grabbed a little bit of shut-eye, got there at 5, and I think I got home at midnight that night and was back at like 4 a.m. And that's the way it ran. And the guy, Drew kind of oversaw me and took care of me as Barrett-Jackson management. But I worked under a gentleman, and unfortunately I can't remember his name, and he had done it for years. He was in charge of all of the people that were running vehicles. And for the couple of days prior to Barrett-Jackson, because I got in and helped do some of the check-in and things like that, he kind of supervised me, and then he would assign me to some cars to drive over the block and things. And that was his vacation. He'd take a week off of his job. He worked for the city of Phoenix or city of Scottsdale, and I can't remember what department. But he would take his vacation, or a week of his vacation, to go to Barrett-Jackson to work for Craig Jackson and be around all of these cars. And I think Craig that year gave him like a Testarossa to drive. So it's an interesting experience. It has definitely grown. I mean, when I was out there, it was like around 2000, doing my internship, there were only 2, maybe 3 auctions. And like I said, now we've got 6 going on, and they overlap and they're on top of each other. And there's just a lot of things going on, and there is only so much money to be spread around. And the economy's been great the last few years. And, I think there's been a lot of money to spread around. And that's the other thing I would say with this year's. I think we're being a little bit tighter with our, wallets.
I would somewhat agree with the tighter with our wallets, but I do have a few more pickup trucks, just because I wanted a cross section of pickup trucks, semi-utility vehicles, just to see where the sold price, where the gavel hit. And so we start with that 96 F-150 pre-runner that sold for $10,450. And then we move on to a 1983 Subaru Brat that sold for $13,200. And then we move on to they literally called it a Marty McFly look-alike 88 Toyota SR5 pickup truck that sold for $21,450. This is a basic bottom-of-the-line SR5 Toyota pickup truck that sold for $21,450. And then we move on to a 47 Crosley pickup truck that sold for $26,400. And then last but not least, actually no, I've got two more. I have a 62 Corvair pickup truck that sold for $77,000. And I understand the Corvair pickup truck is very rare, but holy crap, $77,000 for a Corvair, anything, in my mind, is insane.
Is that in stock?
Yeah. Well, it's restored.
Right, but it's not hot rodded?
No. It's a very nice restoration. At least it looks like a very nice restoration from the pics. Hard to tell, but it looks like it was done well. But 77 G's for a Corvair pickup. And then the one that really blows my mind, because let me go back and reference the 1996 F-150 pre-runner, properly built, ready to go Pommel Baja that sold for $10,450. Right now, I am looking at a 1968 Ford Econoline van that is done up as the Mystery Machine. Now, it's done well. The interior, everything looks like the cartoon. It's done incredibly well. It sold for $59,400. It's a 68 Econoline. If you gold-plated it and put diamonds in the interior, it still wouldn't be a $59,000 vehicle.
I think that might say something interesting to the generations that are getting interested in vehicles and the auctions and have money, because one of the big things we talk about on the show occasionally is people put their money where their memories are. So you always have that dream car poster hanging on your wall. A lot of people, and I don't say this because I work at the Corvette Museum or anything like that, but a lot of people have that dream poster of a Corvette on their wall. And when they get enough money to buy that dream car, they'll go buy it. Right now it's mostly C4s, the fourth generation Corvette that people in my generation, the generation that's coming into some disposable income are buying. But guess what? That's the same generation that Scooby-Doo was big. I mean, Scooby-Doo was one of my favorite cartoons. So I almost think that might speak to the fact that somebody out there is a huge Scooby-Doo fan. They have the disposable income, and they wanted that Mystery Machine.
It would have to be ludicrous levels of disposable income, because looking at this thing is like, it's a 68 Econoline painted blue with a little bit of vinyl on the outside of it. It's really, I don't look at that and go, oh man, that reminds me of the cartoon, and I love Scooby-Doo so much and Re-Raggy and all that. It's like, what?
Let me take your Scooby-Doo van. Let me take your Toyota SR5 Back to the Future lookalike. And just scrolling through Barrett, they've also got a Lightning McQueen RX-8 and things like, some things like that.
Yeah,
which is the wrong car.
And then you're talking your Subaru Brat, and we have the Radwood factor, and exactly what Derek said. 80s and 90s cars are becoming hotter. If you look at Hagerty's list that they just put out last December of like the 20 hottest cars to buy, you can look at it and you go, yeah, I've seen a lot of movement on those, especially if you're a Bring a Trailer fan and you stalk Bring a Trailer daily. Those numbers are almost what Barrett Jackson used to be. Some of those Bring a Trailer numbers are crazy.
Just out of curiosity, where does the 84 190E Mercedes rank on that list?
Well, it all depends on how you market it, where you market it. But you're not dealing with a celebrity car. There was on Instagram, Matt D'Andrea, who does CarCast with Adam Carolla and does Shift and Steer with Brad Fanshaw and and Aaron Hagar, he asked about the Steve McQueen Mustang that sold for $3.74 million, I believe, after fees. And he said, was it worth it? And I defended it. I said, well, you figure $20,000 for the Mustang, 67 fastback that's beat up and needs restored, but it does run and drive. Kind of. And
I'm talking about the restored part, and it doesn't need to be restored.
And 3.6 or 3.738 for the Steve McQueen factor. Is that worth it? Well, somebody paid $17 million for a Rolex Daytona that Paul Newman wore. So the celebrity factor there compared to a Newman Daytona, just a regular Newman Daytona watch, which is 150 grand on a good day, if I remember my watch numbers correctly. His celebrity added $16.75 million to a watch.
So what you're saying is I need to take my 190E to a vinyl shop, have them put in about 12-inch tall letters, Senna, from the front fender down the front, or from the fender down to the front door. And I need an 11 on the hood, an 11 on the quarter panels, and a Senna sunshade, black with white letters, says Senna. And then my 190E is
quite possibly.
Okay, cool. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Well, we've covered Sean's list on here. Derek, what did you find? I know I sent you one because for some reason Sean and Derek both only did Barrett-Jackson. I think there was some confusion. I meant look at any auction, but what did you find anything that was interesting that you wanted to comment about there, Derek? Or
are
you going to get into what the other complaint I had about this year's auctions?
Well, I can get into one of the complaints, which is I didn't see a lot of stuff that was very interesting. It took me a while, and yes, granted, I only looked at Barrett-Jackson, and I evidently messed up the homework for this week. Sorry, teacher. But there's not a lot, and of course, for me, I'm one who's going to be looking at the horseless carriage, brass era, classic era stuff that's coming up. It's what I collect. It's more the world that I go to auctions to look at, possibly bid on, so on and so forth.
And Barrett-Jackson's not the place that Derek goes to. Derek should be at the Bonhams and RM auctions.
Yeah, but I can't afford those.
And for some crazy...
Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because the one car I bought at auction was through RM, so...
And
which brings me to a point I wanted to make. Auctions can be very good for people to go to, and especially people getting into the hobby, because that was actually my first antique car that I purchased, which is the 1917 Overland, the Model 90 Roadster I have. I got it for a reasonable price. Yes, it's a basket case, and we're getting close to having the restoration finished. It's should be done this year. Fingers crossed. Life got in the way. I moved a lot. But, as we were just talking about, Monday at Barrett-Jackson, for somebody that's looking for some of these cars, there are some good buys, as Sean pointed out. But overall, I mean, yeah, John, you sent me one that I evidently had, I didn't see because I didn't look at Russo. But there wasn't a lot. There was one really cool car, although can I complain about the auction sites like you did in the first part, John? Because I decided to share these things to myself. The lots that I found I was interested in, I decided to hit the share button and email them to myself. Well, they put the web address in the subject line. And of course, now that it has come to my email box, I can't click on it. They didn't put it in the body of the email where I could click on it and go to the actual lot. Rather, they just put it in the title, the subject line, and you can no longer click on it. It says a hyperlink. So smooth move there. But there was one that I did find that I'm really interested to see what it will sell for, because it is one of the, I believe it was 5 1954 Taylor Aero cars ever built, which of course was the flying car made by Taylor, the Taylor Company, back in the early mid 50s, right around 54. I don't remember when they built all 5. I think they'd stretched them out over a couple years, but I'm extremely interested to see what that one does, because there's not a lot of flying cars left in existence that are out there. So that one piqued my interest a little bit, and of course, any of the classic era cars will pique my interest because, well, I have some classic era cars, and I like to watch what the market's doing on those.
I'm literally scrolling through Barrett while we're talking right now, looking for those classic era cars that you love, Derek. There's nothing.
I found 3. I have a, let's see, what did I get? Well, that's actually a brass era. Another interesting car coming up at Barrett, I think it's on Saturday, is a 1918 Kissel Model 38 touring car. That's interesting because that's, of course, pre the famed Kissel Gold Bugs, which sell for big money because there's not a lot of them out there. But that'll be an interesting one to see that Kissel name go across and see what it brings. But they do have a 31 Cadillac V12 Phaeton going up. They've got a 26 Packard 443 Phaeton and a 34 Packard 12 convertible. So that was about the only 3 I found that were really kind of true full classic era automobiles.
Yeah, I'm looking through right now, and the only, there's some mid 30s stuff that I've scrolled across. But man, there's nothing like 1920 and back. Like you said, there's 3. That's it. That's where do you go to find that stuff? Obviously, it's not Barrett Jackson, so like, I guess it'd be cool to know, like, if we have some folks listening that want to find those pre 1920s or 1920 and back cars, what's the auction to go to, or is there one?
Whoa! If I share my secrets, I mean, come on.
Like I said, when I was going through Bonhams,
I apologize.
Bonhams and RM had really quite a few.
Yeah, those are the 2 big ones.
And okay. Russo kind of amazed me. They had a lot of everyday cars. They really had, to me, nothing over the top. And I mean, I like Drew, and this is not slamming Drew or anything, but really, out of his whole auction this year, he had a 1919 Chevrolet, which I sent to Derek. Derek, I believe, owns something, well, same year, but definitely not as modified. He has an original 62 Myers Manx. He has an 85 Lamborghini Countach LP 5000 QV. And the only reason I even click that as a thing of interest is it's, to me, the pretty style Countach. It doesn't have all the wings and everything. No big root wing on the back. It's a white car. It's, probably the way I'd like to have my Lamborghini. And that was just, that would be, I clicked a 2004 Chevrolet Corvette, and that's not because of me. That's because I have a client who has one, and I'm trying, just basically watching it. And then the coolest one he had, and here I am, Radwood, etc. They have a 1989 Mercedes-Benz 560 SEC wide body. And I've always been a fan of that car. The only thing that's wrong with this one is it's not an AMG. The thing's got, it's completely restored, 32,000 miles, carbon fiber body panels now, bumpers, gray zebra wood. It says
that's my car.
Momo steering wheel, period correct Recaros.
Oh yeah, that's my car.
Coil over suspension, big brake kit. So that one hasn't sold yet, according to Russo. Saturday, 9:15 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Really amazes me too that if you go to Russo's site, every single one of the cars has like a 15 or 20 minute window that they're going to sell in, which I guess brings me to another problem I have with auctions. It's 3 minutes and out, and that's pretty much the way auctions run. You better get all the money. They're going to try to get all the money they can in 3 minutes for you. Now, granted, if you're running, maybe a McLaren Senna or something that's going to be big dollars. A P1 McLaren, I saw both of those are going up for auction. Maybe it'll hang around a little bit if the money gets a little bit big, or a Duesenberg, or some of that stuff. But I think I would kind of be bothered if you're telling me, here's the window your car is going to sell. As a buyer, yeah, I absolutely love that you're going to do that and tell me when I need to be there and leave the bar and be able to get to your auction. But
that window is when it's going to be coming across the block, or literally they hammer it and it's done? Like if there's an ongoing,
if it's ongoing bidding, they'll continue that. But when you say reserve, that's met reserve at 50,000 and the car is 55,000, and we're going 55, 55, 55, 5, 55, 5, 56, 56, 56, they're going to keep going. But if we're at 56, 56, do I hear 57? Do I hear 57? You're going to get about 20 seconds of that. And then when that 3 minute window rolls, the car rolls. And I don't, that may or not be fair.
I mean, if it stalls in that environment, though, it's kind of done, right? Because anybody that's going to phone in a bid is on the phone for that car. They know when it's coming across, and anybody that's in the audience that wants that car, they're there, right? Like, isn't that just part of the auction experience that you expect?
If you watch enough of them, I personally feel that some cars do get rushed off the stage, that there's a little bit of activity. There might be a little bit more in the room, that there's a bidder that, may or may not be on the fence, and he's ready to go, but, he's kind of thinking, is my wife going to kill me? Or,
Probably.
They're all thinking that. Well, if it's a male, if it's a male that's married, they're all thinking that, even if the wife is as much of an enthusiast as they are. Typically, I would think.
I guess I've never suffered from that guilt, but that might explain my relationship histories. But
we won't go into that.
Yeah. Another one.
We'll go out to dinner and talk about that with the wives.
Another one that surprised me, and this is their first time in Scottsdale, is the Leak auction. And it's an auction house that's been around for years. They recently merged with the Ritchie Brothers auction house. And here's a complaint on them. I go to Leaky, or Leak, Leake, website, search Scottsdale, and click to see their inventory. It takes me to the Ritchie Brothers Iron Planet auction site. Ritchie Brothers Auctions and the Iron Planet auction site, they auction industrial vans, bulldozers, rock crawlers, land movers. It's all industrial equipment. I don't want to be there. I'm sorry. That first of all rubs me the wrong way. Is you've taken me away from your site, and you're really nowhere here on this site. Does it say Leak? I think it's just poor website design. You're selling a couple $1 million in cars. At least go to GoDaddy and create your own website. I mean, don't. It's just. I think it's horrible.
Yeah, don't set it up as an old school bulletin board that runs off a whatever baud modem. That's a bad idea.
Yeah. So I was just kind of amazed that that's how their site operated. Gooding only had 2 cars that kind of interested me, and one was kind of the Tucker. They've got a 48 Tucker 48 selling, and that goes back to the conversation, Sean. Celebrity cars. Would the Tucker and Derek? Maybe what's your feeling on this? And it's something that gets discussed. Would the Tucker be the collectible it is? I mean, the auction estimate's what 1.75 to 2.25. Would the Tucker be a $1 million car if it wasn't for the movie and being the star of that movie? I mean, that's.
I think it would be and should be. Preston Tucker was an interesting figure in the automotive industry. Some of his ideas were far ahead of their time, and the limited number of those vehicles, and of course, I always have a hard time with that because I have a hard time understanding how vehicles become so expensive and how they become so highly valued sometimes. But it is, from my perspective, it is a car that has a strong historical provenance. There's a story there with each one. There's a lot of historic value to those cars. So I see where the value in those cars exist. Does that answer your question?
I think it should be, but it wouldn't be without the movie. The general public just wouldn't know.
I think I think your diehard collector would be aware, but I think it would be, I believe it would be a high six-figure car. I believe, like we just talked with the Steve McQueen Mustang, I think there's, say, $700,000, $8,000 for the car. And in the case of this one, if you went with a $2 million sale price, which is right in the middle of the estimate, $1.2 million for the celebrity factor of the movie. And this car actually it was used in the movie, so it is a camera car, on-screen car with that history. So I think you get some of that celebrity factor, but that's just kind of I respect Tucker for his engineering and what he did and what his thought process was, and he did the really the impossible. I mean, but I think other people have tried it and kind of have failed. I mean, if another car that I have here, where is it? Must be RM has it. Has a Vector. They built 10 or 12 Vectors, so yeah, it's a fifth of the car that the Tucker was. But the Vector's never been in a movie. But the Vector is kind of just as cutting edge to the supercar world as the Tucker was. I mean, the Tucker had mechanical problems. The Vectors had mechanical problems. The Vectors were cutting edge on styling. The Tuckers were cutting edge on styling. I mean, there's, to me, some similarities. The Vector, the original Vector, was it the WH, W4s? I can't remember. They used switches out of F-15 fighter, fighters and stuff. So they, Jerry Wiegland, I believe is the guy's name, who ran Vector. But these cars, they're finally getting a little bit of traction. But, these cars are low six-figure cars. If we came out and we did a, movie, America's Supercar, and highlighted the Vector, and we put, Brad Pitt in it, or who's ever. I don't watch a lot of movies. I don't know who's a big star right now, but throw somebody in there and it becomes a hit movie. Or all of a sudden, Vector is going to jump up to that $1.5 million price.
Yeah, just let Ryan Reynolds lean on it in a gin commercial.
Yeah, exactly. One of 17 production examples of the W8 twin turbo. So they probably built about 40 of all the models of Vector.
And that's potentially, I think the Vector is arguably the first hypercar. It was at least the first car that shot for that. I don't know whether they really got there, but they shot for that. level of ridiculous.
I've kind of always loved the Vector, but I'm an oddball guy. I like the oddball car.
So. I had a Vector on my wall when I was.
I had a Vector on my wall. It was a red W2 with the black louvers on the back and stuff. Now this one is probably the one I would want. It's a 91. This one, if anybody wants to look it up, it's lot 213 at RM. I know it'll have sold by the time you see it.
Can we look that up by lot number? Because I hear that annoys people.
RM will actually let you do that by lot number.
Okay, that's great.
And it's a purple one, and I love purple. So.
Yeah, anybody that thought it was a good idea to take switches out of an F-15 and put them in a car, more power to them. They're my hero. Yeah. That's not a bad thing. And you're talking about cars that are just selling for bonkers money that you can't understand. I'm trying to wrap my brain around F-body Chevys and Fox body Mustangs right now. Like the Fox body Mustang in particular is a car. Like I'm looking at auction prices on these things, and they're just. I would love another Fox body at some point in time. I've always wanted a Celine notchback, but my God, man, like they're $60,000+ cars now, if not more. And I'm looking at a 90 Camaro, a 90 IROC. Now, granted, this is a 1LE IROC, and there were only 62 of those cars made in 1990. I get that it's a rare car. It's really low mileage, but this 1990 Camaro sold for $54,000.
Are you still talking Barrett Jackson?
Yeah.
Numbers? But we're gonna go Radwood, and I'll be honest. When I was in high school, as much as I loved my CRX and things like that, there was a little bit of me that kind of wanted, the doctor's kid's Mustang. We had 2 kids with Mustang GTs. I didn't go to an extremely wealthy school, but we were on the higher end. That, or I remember a friend of mine had his IROC Z. They were kind of cool cars back then. So there were a lot of people. I mean, it's that I want to say wanted those cars in high school. Now they can go back and buy them. Just like I've never understood, and I'm sorry, Sean, I know you've owned one. I've never understood 67 to 69 Camaros. They don't make sense to me. Even the Firebirds and that, I've never once had the motivation to own one of those cars.
God, I love my.
You could give it to me.
Firebird's way better than the Camaro.
And I would sell it as fast as I could. But that's kind of the same thing. I always wondered, why are people paying this much money for those? And
I wish I still had mine. I mean, mine started life as a basket case 6-cylinder and ended up not necessarily like a Z28 clone, but I had SS stripes on it, and we had some crazy motors on it, and centerline auto drags, and gutted interior, and aluminum door panels, and pro buckets, and it was just a weird teenage build car, but it was my first car. And that car, like I think about that car and the money that we had in it. We had more money in the paint job than we had in everything else in the car. It was ridiculous paint job for the time. And it was beautiful, but at the end of the day, it was a 6-cylinder Camaro that we turned into, in the 80s, it would run high 12s, low 13s, high 12s with the last motor we put in it. And that was pretty quick for what it was. It was never anything ridiculous, but now if that car was in that shape, it'd be a $50,000 car. And that I don't understand. And I don't know whether I don't understand that because I'd like to have another one because it was my first car, and at $50,000, I can't justify that. Or is it really just a bonkers number that doesn't make sense to anyone, and no one understands why they're selling for that? I don't know. Chime in, someone. Help me out.
I got to go with it's like I said, there are cars out there that are selling for prices that I don't understand. It's like you said. I mean, there are just some cars that I sit and watch them sell or look at auction estimates on and think, where did anyone come up with that number for that car? But then there's also cars out there that I sit back and think, well, for that car, that price is one heck of a steal. So maybe I'm just off my rocker on what is worth money right now. But of course, I'm biased to the. I guess I'll say I am probably biased to the, you know, historical value of the vehicle over, you know, 100-point Concours restoration, or again, let's go with a 1967 to 69 Camaro that has a paint job that looks like a brand new Toyota that just rolled out of the factory, which is not even close to what those cars looked like when they came out of the factory.
Right.
That to me, it makes the car worth less, in my opinion. But
you're coming at it from a different angle, though, right?
Yeah, I'm not a car collector that has $1 billion to go out and spend whatever I want on a car. I'm a car collector enthusiast that works in the nonprofit world and has to carefully spend my money on affordable cars like Chevrolet 490 touring cars. So
if you were in the market for a nice 69 Camaro, would you rather have a nicely kept patinaed 69 Camaro, or would you rather have a Concours restored 69 Camaro?
Can we make it a Firebird?
No, we're talking about Camaros. I never liked the Firebird front end. I always thought,
that's so much better than the Camaro.
Oh, it's just the only thing good about the Firebird was the shake.
Everything?
No, the shake.
The good thing about the Firebird, Pontiac at least knew what they wanted their car to look like.
Yeah, exactly.
There's two different front clips on the Camaro. We want big headlights that stick out there. We want the silly little sliders, which are real.
The only ones that you really want were the hidden headlights.
Yeah, with a little. There's a story back when I was at McPherson. We had a 67 Camaro in that actually sold at Barrett-Jackson a few years later. And I spent days trying to figure out and make those headlights work. And there was a diode that had failed in the wire harness that isn't on any Chevrolet wiring diagram known to mankind. But you needed this little diode in there to get the headlight doors to, I can't remember if it was open or closed, but this stupid little diode, it took us 3 or 4 days to find it, literally tracing every wire from the headlight motors back to the switch. So,
well, hey, you learned something, didn't you?
Yeah. And
so to go back to Sean's question, Sean, I would take the well-maintained, well-kept 69 Camaro, over a restored one. I mean, my 61 Ford Falcon that I have is just a well-maintained Falcon. Over time, it's had one repaint. I think the seats have had a new interior stretched over them, but everything else is pretty much all original in the car, and I love that car. My 1919 Chevy is my 1919 Chevy, the 490. It had a okay restoration done probably sometime in the 90s, and it's just been kept up. And since I've had it, I haven't been afraid to drive it. I got it sorted out, drove it around. Yeah, granted, it's not running right now because I got to get the leather cone clutch relined on it now. But that's what happens when you drag race Ford Model Ts.
The what?
But cone clutch, leather-faced cone clutch.
Leather-faced clutch.
Yeah.
Okay, like I said, I don't live in that world, but leather and clutch are two things that I have literally never heard in the same sentence as a meshed product.
It works great. Actually.
Okay, that's mind blowing to me.
You can go buy spec, next week and discuss that with him.
I'd like a stage 3 leather faced clutch, please, and just watch them go. What? I need a stage 3 clutch for my Model T.
Model Ts don't have leather. They've got Model A. Nope. Model A is a typical clutch. Leather cone clutches are. Model Ts didn't have them because Model Ts are essentially an automatic transmission that's manually controlled.
I've literally never driven one. I'd love to.
Yeah, well, we gotta get working on that. But leather face cone clutches were. I mean, my Overland has one. The Chevys had them. Locomobiles. Most of the early cars, that was how they were making them work. So, Model T was very unique at the time in having the type of transmission it had.
I would imagine if I spent any amount of time with you at all, my brain would explode. Like,
what do you think? Will's no longer on the show. I mean, he's gone.
Will's like, leather-faced what? That was a bad guy in a movie.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Your clutch has a chainsaw that it literally attacks the pressure plate with. Did I just throw us off course really bad there?
No,
I don't know. We usually just wait for John to bring it back around.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, you need to check out Bonhams there, Derek. I'll send you the article about how they had a lot of pre-war American and European automobiles. Supposedly, let's see here, a whole collection from Philip Reed, I believe it was. Collection. I lost my tab that had it. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, Philip Reed collection of Southern California featuring 16 automobiles, most of which are pre-war American and European. The entire collection is to be offered with no reserve. Reed was a well-known and respected in the collector car world, particularly as an active member and former president and board director of the Horseless Carriage Club of America.
Okay, I know the name sounds familiar, but
his collection includes such brass era rarities as the 1901 Winton that he bought from Gene Autry and the fascinating 1902 Boyer, the only one of its kind known to exist.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know both those cars.
So there's your auction you need to be at is Bonhams.
I guess so.
And believe it or not,
I can't afford what Bonham sells.
And believe it or not, I found that link on looking at a Koenigsegg CCX. So
that makes perfect sense.
So
I hear that's what Koenigsegg's going to next. There's the leather-faced clutch definitely is coming back. I think they use the leather-faced clutch in the Jesco.
It's actually, from what I understand, a leather cotton carbon fiber weave.
Leather cotton composite. That's wonderful. Because and honestly, if anyone can make that work, if Christian von Koenigsegg is listening to this podcast, and we know you are, Christian, we dare you to make that work.
You're kind of joking, but I'll leave point number one quiet. Point number two is one of the guys that's big into the Caterham 7s and that, and I kind of know him. He's actually an engineer with Koenigsegg.
Well, call him. Call him up. Get him on the show.
Yeah, get Christian to appear on the show.
We want a leather cotton composite clutch, and what we really want to talk to you about is your maglev valve train. I really want to talk to them about that. I'm fascinated by that whole thing. We've just completely derailed from auctions. I apologize. Yeah. Koenigsegg.
I'm trying to remember. I did hear a podcast, and I would have to do some digging that Christian was on, and he kind of discussed that valve train.
I have looked at it in depth, every technical thing that I could find online, and it's, yeah, sure, bring on 30,000 RPM. I'm ready. Let's do this. It's just amazing tech.
Well, we're not going to bring it full circle tonight. We're at the hour mark. This conversation tonight, I don't think went any way that any of us here expected, and probably you as a listener, but I think we had a pretty decent conversation and flowing show, with the exception of one or two awkward pauses that shall remain because we don't do a lot of editing anymore, which has been great for actually our listenership's up dramatically. We are consistently ranking in the top 250 podcasts in the U.S. And for some crazy reason, we're ranked automotive podcasts, not all podcasts, but automotive category. And for some crazy reason, we're hovering in the mid-20s for automotive podcasts in Canada.
You know why?
All right.
Because
Canadians
love 69 Camaros. They love them. Love them.
I don't know if we've mentioned a 69 Camaro on this show ever. Yeah, we probably
get ready to crack the top 10.
Well, wait, what year's Tony's?
Yeah, I guess Tony did discuss his.
We did talk about Camaros with Tony.
Almost ironically, we talked to Tony almost a year ago to the day. So
I'm gonna be watching the rankings and just hoping for a spike so I can come back and go, ah, you see.
So, but on that matter, we never ask you guys. We tell you to chime in on Facebook or watch us on Instagram, and we promise we're going to get to Twitter, and that just never happens. But we do never say that's really horrible English, I believe, and so is that. But we never discuss the Apple iTunes rankings. It really, I don't care what other podcasts tell you, it doesn't help us move up the iTunes charts. That's all based on downloads and things like that. But it's always nice if you go and throw in a couple I don't care, 4-star, 5-star reviews. We know we're not perfect every week. We should be. I'm here every week. But yeah, go to iTunes if you listen to this on some sort of Apple device and leave us a good review and chime in a little bit on the Facebook and Instagram and let us know what's happening, some topic ideas. We've got a really good list of topics and some really good interviews coming up. Will's potentially putting together some fabulous stuff and maybe has some interesting happenings. But we're hoping to grab a few more people out of the Grand National Roadster show. So we'll see if Will stays on about that. Otherwise, what do you guys want to close up with?
I'll let you go first, Derek.
Well, I think, like I already said, seeing we're talking about auctions tonight, if you're a younger person trying to find a car and you don't already know people in the world of whatever car you're looking for, be it antique, classic, more modern Radwood type stuff, auctions, if you're smart, if you're wise, if you go do your research and really pay attention, as we already discussed, Sean brought it up very early on in the episode, there are some good buys to be had to get yourself into the car hobby and get yourself a car. Just what I would say is be smart about it, stick to your guns, know what you're doing. And also, pay attention to the buyer fees so you don't get hit with something you're not expecting. But, I encourage people to keep an eye on the market. The auctions help set the market, and, it'll help you get into the car world if you're wise about it. And, if you're already into it, you might find a great buy to add to your collection. So.
I absolutely and totally agree with that. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a reprieve from my 69 Camaro talk and close with a completely self-serving thing. Tomorrow at Barrett Jackson Scottsdale, there's a 1973 Volvo 1800 ES wagon crossing the block that has 62,000 original miles on it. It is absolutely beautiful, and it is in my top 5 dream cars. If anyone would like to buy that from me, I would be eternally grateful, and I'll even say thank you. I have to echo what Derek said, though. There are some crazy buys out there that I can't wrap my brain around it. I can't wrap my brain around what I saw going through the Barrett Jackson site because that's what I looked at. But if Monday and Tuesday is truly typically, if it's trended the way that John is saying that it's trended, and I think Derek, you brought it up too. I didn't realize. I thought Barrett, because the only time I've ever been at Barrett Jackson was either out in the parking lot somewhere doing thrill rides with SRT, or after the thrill rides, I've come in on like a Friday, Saturday night and watched the high dollar stuff. I didn't have any barometer for the bargains that are out there, and it's pretty mind blowing, man. It's pretty mind blowing. It makes me want to sort of flip a couple of the cars that I have in the garage and go look for some new stuff because I'm that guy. I get cardboard very easily, and I have a carological clock. I don't know if y'all. I imagine y'all both have those, and mine's ticking. Bad. Time for something new.
And I've always said I'm not a big proponent of buying cars at auctions. I'm sorry, every auction house out there. I'm not a big proponent of that. I mean, there are certain cars you have no choice. If it's a one of one, I mean, it's an 08 Koenigsegg like we just talked about. Yeah, that might be where you need to go. If you want a Ford GT and Ford's not going to sell you one, they're just coming off their 2-year ban to sell. Some of the cars are beginning to trickle out. I think I saw 3 of them or 4 of them available in Arizona this weekend. Yeah, you can go buy those there. But some of that everyday stuff, it is a buyer beware. It's not always the nicest stuff in the world, no matter what they say. Auction companies are used car dealers, and treat them like that. Don't go in and think just because they have great TV coverage, and I'm not talking about just one of them, Barrett Jackson, Russo, all of them, because they're reselling a car. They're giving you a venue, and they're trusting the seller. To be honest with them, I mean, you can get a lousy car from Bring a Trailer. You can get a lousy car from eBay. You can get a lousy car from Facebook Marketplace. But what auctions do have going for them is the ability, especially if you can make it to Arizona auction weeks. If you are a car person, and people will talk about going to Pebble Beach and what you'll see there, and the Concours and the Monterey Car Weeks, or Amelia Island, or Hilton Head, or going to the Goodwood Festival of Speed. I honestly think auction weeks, Scottsdale, and in January should be on everyone's list of a thing to do. That should be on your bucket list, because you can go to these 6 places. You're going to spend $300 on admission tickets between everybody, but you're going to see more cars than ever. You're going to see cars that you've never discussed before. I think we talked when we had Brett Hatfield on the show that I drove. I can never pronounce the designer's name. The Scaglielli whatever Corvette. One of 3.
Scaglietti.
Yeah, that one.
You're welcome.
I one of 3 produced. Where are you going to get an opportunity to see that outside of a museum? And if it's at a museum, it's probably not going to run or drive.
Yeah, yes, it will.
Well, the Corvette Museum, I believe, has got a new thing going on where I saw a Facebook thing about the Living Museum. Not Facebook, YouTube. Check out the National Corvette Museum YouTube page, by the way.
More Mondays.
And, but it's worth going to. You can get some deals there, but you also can do yourself some harm and get caught up in the excitement. I know people who have had both happen to them. And sometimes the excitement gets really costly, no matter how much money's in the bank. But
and if you really love low production number cars, John, I know where you can drive a one of 4, only wide body 84 Lawrence or Mercedes to come to the States. I know where you can drive it.
Well, I'm going to kind of say here, I have a one of one Cadillac wide body in the driveway. So
did that make you feel good to one up me there? Did it make you feel really good?
Yes.
Actually, John.
Yeah.
If I remember right, you don't have it in the driveway.
That's very true.
No, actually,
true.
I do have it in the driveway. It's not my car, but it is in the driveway. Parked right next to my Base Fusion SE.
Oh yeah.
Which
it's a turbo though.
Yeah, my little turbo. You ought to see the turbo on the Cadillac. But we'll talk about that sometime. We'll get Zara on here to talk about her. I call it I really want her to get the license plate ATS EMA because it was an ATS that was shown at SEMA. So, but
I like it.
We'll
yeah.
With that and getting way off track of the auctions and that again, I'm out of here tonight.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.
Remember, always keep your eyes open at the auctions because you never know when you might find a Zamboni.